Michael. I am now awake. That's good. Welcome, everyone. And we know who we are, and I'm glad. I had dinner with 4 delegates to the GA last night. Not our delegates, but First Church delegates. I am completely worn out, and I have not paid attention to the goings-on. Koa has, because he's a delegate, but I'm worn out. I don't know how they do it. I understand, however, that the all-virtual General Assembly has been remarkable in its flow, in its technology, in its ability to handle hiccups, and there have been some, and in its rules for expression and behavior, and so it's a really good thing that they're doing it, but to be tied to my computer for 4 days, I don't think so. Anyway, the GA is going well. It's a big deal. It's always a big deal, but this year it seems to be particularly big and well represented by all spectrums of Unitarians, Unitarian Universalists. Okay, announcements. There are a few. You have your announcements in the packet that you were handed, and I don't think there's anything there that anyone here cannot read. Of course, yesterday's Pride booth was canceled. You'll see that here in today's announcements. It was extremely hot, and there was a decision to cancel the Unitarian booth, but the parade was a big success, so that was good. I was not there because of the heat. Anyway, we've got some really good things going on. One is Care Team is up and moving, and we're getting thank yous. John Sutterth has thanked you. I want to note that Ruth Krause, who is very active with the Care Team, is in the hospital, although I heard she was coming home today. Oh. Okay. Okay. Well, she needs our care and concern. Ruth is a dynamo for our congregation, so let's concentrate our care on Ruth right now. Next 2 weeks, there is a memorial bench ceremony for Leslie Edwards in in Lincoln Heights. And there's information in here for that, so if you are interested in attending, that would be wonderful. Jack Brennan is coordinating the efforts, but I know that MJ Pearson is going to offer the prayer on behalf of our congregation, so I'm thrilled that she wants to be there. She and Leslie were very good friends, so that's a really good thing. Please don't forget your donations for Valley Interfaith. They have requested canned fruit and peanut butter, high-value food items, and they need volunteers too. So since we all appear to be retired or semi-retired, maybe we can just think about that. I know we get very busy. Anyway, oh, I'm sorry. Come, please. Very good point. There are dogs and cats too, that's for sure. I read something yesterday, which I've read many times, but reminding people that with the 4th of July coming up, many dogs and cats are highly sensitive to noise and would prefer that we not use fireworks. But one of the things that we can do instead of fireworks, or in addition to, is to maybe donate some dog food and cat food to shelters. And it's a way of acknowledging that they are our best friends. So thank you very much. Next Sunday, we all love it when Michael speaks. Michael is speaking next week about The title is Apology for Apologies. So think about that. I said I thought I might resonate with that. Anyway, let us begin. Let us silence our noisemaker. Jack, I'm sorry.
One thing, since you mentioned the Pride Parade, I just want to say, I did go down there with my granddaughter, and I was just really impressed. That thing lasted, the parade lasted an hour and a half. Constant people and groups going by Fountain Square.
They, on the news, said they thought it may have exceeded attendance in the past. And it's really cool that our city can put on something like that. It's really cool. And we're lucky, because not all cities can do it. I have a very good friend who is spearheading a pride parade in Lebanon, Ohio, sometime in July, and he's succeeding so far, but that would be a tough one, I think. Anyhow, I think that's it for announcements. I've asked Jack to please light the chalice for us this morning so that we can begin our mindful attention to our service.
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, wisdom, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, wisdom, and joy.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Michael. Some words to begin our service. Family and friends throughout life have said to hold to your heart to do what is right. Be true to your beliefs, and you can be anything you want to be. That's what they told me. I listened and can now see they were right. I walked my path strong without compromise. I am now the me they inspired me to be, even when that was not who they were. I remembered to love everyone, especially myself. And now my joy shines bright like the sun. My gratitude with each day swells. So I ask you, friend, who made you believe in yourself? Who gave you strength to walk your path true? Who inspired you to be you? And so let us rise, if we're willing and able, to sing together the opening hymn, which is 1051, and it is called We Are. We Are. So please join in. The words will be on the screen.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations, seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers,
So please join in our unison affirmation. We pledge to create a welcoming community that celebrates human diversity, encourages spiritual growth, fosters responsiveness to our world, and commits to the future of children. So please have a seat. There's one thing that I always forget when I am service leader. Yeah. And that is to welcome our friends on Zoom. So for all of you who are here with us today via Zoom, we welcome you and we thank you for being here. Can't see you right now, but that's okay. You are here and we are happy. Thank you. And now, we have a special message. This is from Koa Lewis, entitled To Be a Superhero. So which one of us is a superhero? I think Koa is personally, but he is here with his message today, to be a superhero. Thank you.
Good morning. It's a day to celebrate because you're about to discover your superpower. In truth, I'm going to suggest some reasons for the upswell in popularity of the superhero myth. If what I say isn't the reason for it, then it is at least a very good thing to do in response to it. Imagine that you were going to be granted a superpower right here today during this service. You go to sleep tonight after spending the day thinking about how you will discipline yourself in training to become adept at using it. You think about situations that could happen and imagine how you would use that power. Maybe it could be used to rescue people in danger. Or perhaps it's the kind of power that you'd be tempted to use primarily for yourself. In your mind, you're writing the story of your future heroic life, now that you have arrived on the national hero scene. Just maybe, you think, you'll be invited to be an Avenger and work alongside your favorites like Iron Man, Black Widow, and Captain America. We have that kind of hope in us, don't we? Particularly when we're young, that having powers could actually happen and will empower us to live better. We let that go, almost without noticing. I know my fascination as a boy with what if I had powers was sufficiently hopeful that I should have been upset to lose it. It didn't just fade, but was replaced by the dream we all join as we grow up around our human kin. I propose that we did not actually lose access to that which made us hope for powers. In fact, the very nature of developing powers that fascinates our youthful mind and captures our imagination is the same as our process of maturation. The notion of a superpower enthralls us because it feels like we've done it before. We remember discovering how to be who we are. Each movement forward in our self-understanding is like the acquisition of a new power, or at least a palpable step forward toward an ability that we did not have before. As soon as we perfect a skill to the degree that it is recognized by others, it becomes part of the dream we are agreeing to believe in. If we could access our first impressions, for example, about learning to use words, we would probably have viewed it as nothing short of miraculous. Suddenly, we have people understanding and responding to us much better than when we had at our disposal only crying, laughing, gurgling, and waving our arms. It was our first superpower. We wiggle an incantation with these lips and thick muscle thing in our mouth, and voila, mommy brings our bottle. After a short period of exultation over the achievement, however, it becomes clear that everyone does it and is expected to do it, and it's kind of no big deal. Many first skills are like that: bike riding, water skiing, catching a baseball, driving, singing on key, speaking in public. Then they settle into the unspectacular category of something people can do. We tacitly agree to lose the super in our superpower. And the corollary to which we unwittingly agree says that there are things people cannot do. Oh, little boy Koa, you're so cute pretending to fly, a parent might say. Just remember, that's not real. Stop and think for a moment how often you've heard, directly or implied by others' attitudes and questions, the message, "That's not real." How do you know that is a gentler phrase that belies the underlying intention. We are checking in with what we've learned we're supposed to agree to. Depending on how you know that, I might need to update my world model, you might think. But the set of ideas in that model are especially strong in their ability to become locked into our consciousness. I am having scrolling issues here. Why would that happen? Let me close this and reopen it. Maybe that will help. There we go. So this model does not get updated very easily, and I think perhaps we should see each of the things that we already accept that we know how to do as essentially powers that we have previously done the work to acquire or receive. Perhaps then our present could be transformed by having those abilities the same way our youthful mind imagined our future to be so transformed. Perhaps we should loosen the tether on our threshold for that. Excuse me a second. You may have heard of synesthesia. Synesthesia is a condition of connections in the perceptual and cognitive systems of the brain. A person with this ability might see colors associated with tones of sound they hear, or they may have the experience of a taste in their mouth when they see certain colors. In more subtle forms, such as the version that I experience, there are colors and positions to certain concepts. In my mind, for example, the alphabet letters and the numbers in the familiar sequence that we all learn them are loosely tied to progressively changing colors and relative positions. It's like going up and down and back up again, a rainbow roller coaster of letters and numbers. Is this really loud? Because I had to turn my hearing aid up to hear you guys earlier, and so it sounds super loud to me. Are you hearing it okay if I speak to the mic? All right, thanks. So synesthesia is one example of what we now call neurodivergence. It's not terribly rare, but it is often missed, so it is relatively unknown to the general population. Like many other divergences from some supposed bell curve of normal, its features include many that might be utilized to advantage. For example, if I see colors accompanying sounds, then the various shades of green, red, and purple in the shimmering aurora of our planet, I might hear a haunting melody. Even without knowing the neurology behind artistic or creative endeavors, we can feel somehow that this would serve well someone who chose, say, a path of music or even audiology. That innate skill, differentiating the synesthete from her neurotypical kin, could be so successful at supporting a survival behavior, in this case a career, that we would never have reason to investigate the nature of that person's mind. They would be a hidden diversity within the norm. This raises an interesting question. How sure are we that we all function the same way? We are all organisms that have faces with the same components and functions, but we each do faces differently. Certainly there are other aspects of who we are that outwardly function the same in each individual. However, I bet if you and I could trade places, and I could feel what you feel and know what it's like to be you, we would see that we do it, each of us, in a different way. We are shaped by different journeys. And whether you think about that idea from the perspective of genetic predisposition, or a cultivating environment in which we matured, or as a result of deliberately chosen habits or cultivated habits that we adopt in response to our world, those differences in approach matter. When we embrace our own way of being with sincere effort to understand, accommodate, and incorporate it into our lives, our different ways lend credence to Commissioner Gordon's quote that's at the top of your order of service. We all make a difference. A lot of times it won't be huge, it won't even be visible, but it will matter just the same. So you might be wondering, what does all this have to do with being a superhero? So let me confess something to you. I have for 30 years been diagnosed as having rapid cycling bipolar disorder. I do not have the traditional swings of intense mania that inspires others to buy 6 pairs of shoes having never run a block in their life. And I don't actually have clinical depressed episodes at all either. You see, technically the DSM just requires that there be poles of moods of any kind that fight to manifest in a person. When the change of mood state happens more than a few times, say, in a year, it's called rapid cycling. Since I was in 2nd grade, I've been aware that sometimes my mind works at its very best. There are a number of other characteristics of my mind, maybe separate, shall we say for our purposes here, brain, that are unusual. A mild form of synesthesia, eidetic or photographic memory, and something I have come to call, in collusion with my colleagues in cognitive science, a holographic thought structure. At certain times, these qualities result in very accelerated thought patterns and speech patterns, and a high aptitude for intellectual tasks. At other times, it is as if those very same qualities are a hindrance. I would be at the high-functioning side, very talkative and adept and agile, mentally and physically, exhibiting meticulous construction of the space within which I operated. That space could be described as an intricate, seemingly ordered chaos, and is the result of my fastidious maintenance of an inner mythology subtending that order. Then, fairly suddenly, I would feel overwhelmed trying to maintain it. The creation and upkeep of that inner environment that was so important to me had been possible because of a flow of energy that I had somehow now lost. The first big tell that this was happening occurred in 2nd grade when I would draw a house as perfect as I could make it, and then began to draw it deteriorating and ultimately destroyed, all the while fantasizing about building it up anew. Despite doing this quite often in school, that went unnoticed for almost 20 years. Over 3 decades, I have come to recognize that there is indeed a regular cycle of mental energy that pulses through me like clockwork. It starts with a period of less energy, more sleep, greater emotional sensitivity, and my holographic thinking is just an inspirational whisper in the background. In my personal mythology, this has come to be known as the blue phase. At the opposite end of my cycle, I am best with fast thinking and fast reflexes. It's as if there's a surplus of energy there to drive all these skills as well as manage doing them all interleaved and quick. And I call that the orange. The middle period seems simply to lack enough flow to drive the skills and to manage them. So I might be walking around carrying 3 things in my hand, doing 6 tasks, and knock something off the counter and catch it midair and put it back, all in one movement, and finish the other tasks. When I try to do that in the middle period, even the second task added is so overwhelming, and I break something, and I get really frustrated. So I call that yellow, to remind me that I am only ready, set, but not yet to go. Caution. And each of these phases holds with uncanny precision and consistency to 2 weeks, with a total of 6. Talk about neurodivergence. An excellent therapist told me at age 24 that I needed to learn to make this an ally and not a liability. So I've spent my life paying attention and weaving a personal mythology that renders instinctive the many tools and techniques that I've developed to maintain it as an ally. By no means am I always successful, and at times I'm not. I can be very hard on myself. But overall, it feels kind of like my superpower. Indeed, as one might be if it actually had a traditional superpower, I have been accused of being obsessed with my cycle. Just the other day, I found myself relating some occurrence in my life to my cycle, and I realized, yes, I absolutely am committed to perpetually looking at how it affects me and how I can utilize that to be and do my very best. And that's when the crux of this message really hit me, like as the saying goes, a ton of bricks. Whatever your way of moving through the world is, your disposition, your temperament, your insights born from your experience, the limitations you've had to overcome that you were handed by genetics or environment, the things you believe in and fear and admire, all of those things are what you can do better than anyone else, because they are the you that no one else is. If you treat your developing self as a superhero coming to learn to use her powers, studying how and when they work, knowing their limitations and what you have to do to sustain them. In short, knowing and revering you, yourself, and your path, then you will be giving to the world something that not another single soul can. And like Commissioner Gordon implies, however big or small the contribution may seem, it matters. And now we have that problem again. No, there we go. The way we've been able to learn about the mechanisms of perception and awareness is by looking at things a majority of us do similarly. We clump together certain aspects of a behavior that we find across individuals, and we try to understand how they work. If we didn't group them together, we wouldn't really have any confidence that we were talking about the same thing or that we really understood something that was shareable. Finding those kind of similarities is one of the most basic cognitive processes that underpins everything our minds do. That's one of the things that my whole PhD and my legacy of research was all about. And we draw a mental boundary around those things which are enough alike to group and study. Unfortunately, it is also our tendency to mistake those boundaries as limits, rather than simply tools that help us know what's the next right question to ask. We start to think of the way things work inside the boundary as the way things work, must work. We start to lean toward the idea that it's normal, and other ways are deviations from that norm. One of the most obvious areas where this occurs is with mental health. Even our diagnostic statistical manual used to assess patients gets its name from the very fact that it is based on this statistical clumping of features. Those sets of characteristics that fall into a known clump outside the norm get called disorders. Over the years, I have struggled to accept that term. To call something that I made an ally a disorder doesn't seem right. I sometimes say, I thrive despite being differently ordered, instead of saying I am or I have bipolar. The emerging phrasing of neurotypical and neurodivergent reflect a similar shift. We can say that the neurological configuration and function of individuals with what are currently known as disorders differs in some specific way from the majority. What we cannot say is what such a person will be able to do with that difference. Wouldn't it be grand if we could encourage them to treat it like a power and discover that? Instead of thinking about ways to help such people fix the way they function, we might help them identify the differences and develop habits that make it something that works for them. We could evolve a world adapted to who we actually are, each differently abled, rather than requiring rigid adherence to the center of a bell curve and asking outliers to change. We might see our differences as strengths, our powers. Of course, though I've couched my proposition that who you are is your superpower in my personal story of neurodivergence, the exact same process can be applied to anyone. A neurotypical person is what I meant to say. Pay attention to who you are, how you function, and what are your limitations, and cultivate habits that make this your ally and not a liability. Anyone can do it. My grandparents, Tom and Frances Stigall, knew this so well, they repeated it to me like a mantra throughout my youth. You can do anything you set your mind to. It was, my papa especially said that. It was as if they were telling me, you're a superhero. You can do anything. And they were right. Had I been raised to accept that I have a condition that in a world of statistical norms by whose deviance from which we are measured and labeled and will be very limiting, I may not have achieved the successes that I have. Ones that not even my most self-denigrating blue phase can shoot down. In fact, my success at achieving my dream to do research on consciousness and cognition has opened the door for a computational model that may shed light on just how profoundly our unique paths through our life get written into our developing brains. The scientific understanding of what makes each of us have our own unique superpowers. We began with the idea that our accepted skills were themselves powers we learned to wield. The power of mobility, the power of speech, the power of listening are primary examples. There are so many capacities that each of us has in different combinations as a result of who we each have and can become. To name a few: belief, imagination, empathy, acceptance, discernment, communication, conviction, desire, creativity, endurance, silence. And then there are the truly unique natures of each of us on our journeys, expressing combinations of these capacities that manifest the power each of you has to be you. How we can dream together a world in which we are not silently encouraged to relinquish our hope to be superheroes is by working to understand and be our own best selves and look for those good things that others are developing in themselves. Discover your superpower by making all of you your ally. Peace and mahalo. So we have a few minutes for talk back if anyone has questions, thoughts. And anybody on Zoom too, if we have that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, because I will not be able to hear you without it.
How many people in the general population, and are there concentrations some places more than others, by race or whatever, who have that mental characteristic of seeing colors or other such things?
Synesthesia happens in about 20% of people, it's estimated, but it's hard to know because a lot of people don't realize that that's playing a role in how they see the world. It's just normal. In the same way that what you look at and see as blue may not be the same color I call blue, but we don't know that because we both just learned to say that about that color. But yeah, it's estimated to be about 20%.
That's a lot. What are the different forms or manifestations of that?
The most common ones are the ones I mentioned, where you're crossing a visual and an auditory, or a visual and an olfactory or taste signal. And then there's the sort of subtle things, like where the way people conceive of certain ideas has kind of a sensory component added to it, like my colors with letters and numbers. There are really unusual versions, like there's one report of a person who, when they watch someone else be injured, they have the pain that their body would feel from seeing it. So it can be very abstract. And one of the things that I alluded to is that in the research that we did on how we would mimic the way thoughts are produced in the mind, we came to see that subtle changes in the way early perception takes place can deeply affect how those thoughts are able to be mixed together and the way we think about the world. So each of us has a different way of looking at the world that comes from who knows what subtle little things may have happened genetically or environment-wise. So that's really the crux of this idea, is that everyone is so unique and has such a different way of seeing the world. There's always going to be some place where that's useful, and we should learn to cultivate that.
Supposedly, identical twins can feel each other's pain.
Yeah, and maybe that's a related thing.
This is relatively bizarre, and very few people know this. Tim does. The fact that numbers do something in my mind, it's like I have a grid in my mind, and I've always been that way. And I thought other people who were good in math were that way, and I had this good friend and I said something to her when we were in high school about the numbers, and she looked at me like I was crazy.
One of the things that it was after I finished my PhD that I kind of pitched some of these ideas to the people who were working on these models, but I would like to be able to investigate, like, how does that change the way you later do math, for example? Like, I can't really say that the colors that I see with numbers has anything to do with the way I do math in my head, but it seems like there might be. And these models sort of bring out those details in a sufficiently explicit way that we might be able to learn something about them and then see whether that's true of people.
Thank you. There is a 20th century composer whose name I cannot recall at the moment, but who has written many symphonies with the names of colors. A symphony called Blue and a symphony called Red. And these are manifestations of his really extreme his extreme power of synesthesia, that he sees all music as color. It's a fascinating, the music is beautiful, but there's a completely different way of looking at the notes as we see them.
As another example of the subtle kinds of conceptualizations that get associated with sensory data, one of the ways this showed in my life early is that when I would go to the doctor with my mom and the doctor would ask me what was wrong, I would say, I have the brown feeling. And he would say to my mom, what does that mean? And she knew me well enough to kind of translate and said, it means that he's feeling sick. It's like what the doctor ultimately ended up thinking was, I'm feeling my immune system kick into gear. I'm feeling my body making B cells. And I called it the brown feeling.
Somehow the Blue Symphony, that strikes a note from some place. Well, it actually, for a long time, they've had, one of the things computers did early on was put colors and music together. I mean, that's been that way for 30 years. I don't know.
There's lots of anecdotal evidence in the history of science about people whose brilliant insight came because they had an association that most people wouldn't make, and you could probably trace a lot of that back to those kinds of neurodivergences.
Thanks, Koa. Just a very, to me, new, interesting way to think about things. My son has been described as neurodivergent. One of my daughters, I don't know whether she clinically is, but has dealt with bipolar type issues, and just the concept of not treating that as, well, you're on the edge of the bell curve, that's bad, that's deficient, that's wrong. Just interesting to think about. Thank you.
I have a friend who is on the autism spectrum and sometimes feels ostracized by that fact enough that when he says the word neurotypical, he says it like he's mad, like neurotypical people. And I think if we're going to make the progress of introducing terms that are neutral, that just talk about where we are in terms of a mathematical model and not a judgment, we should be careful not to let those terms then come to have their own added flavor. So I try to encourage him to say neurotypical is okay too.
I don't remember the name of the movie, but about Nash, who's the Nobel winner, wasn't he, for mathematics? And in the picture, he's at Oxford or Cambridge, I can't remember. And he would do it on the panes of his window in the dormitory. And he had pretty serious problems, as I recall. What was his first name? I don't remember.
How often is it the case, though, that people have serious problems who are neurodivergent simply because no one saw early enough what was happening and said, there are some ways you can learn to make that okay with you, make that work for you. Instead of being stuck in an environment that says, you have to do it this way, why can't I? Because I'm different, but nobody notices.
Well, there was the other one, Matt Damon played the janitor who solved.
Yeah,
solved
Good Will
the-
Hunting.
Yeah, Good Will Hunting, a classic film in my mind. I enjoyed that a lot.
Our grandson, at a very early age, was diagnosed. He had trouble speaking. He talked all the time, but nobody could understand him.
Not even his brother and sister.
His sister, who's only 15 months older than he was, generally, if you've got kids, somebody else, nobody could understand. And as it turns out, he was diagnosed at Children's Hospital with an IQ of 70 when he was 4 or 5 years old. And he is an amazing child. He is an honor student at St. X, and it turns out he has an auditory processing disorder, so he does not understand the spoken word. He reads anything and everything he can get his hands on, and he feels he might be on the autistic spectrum. But he is such a neat person, and he's going to do a hell of a lot for the world. He really will.
There are just so many examples of this. I have another friend who doesn't like to read anything that has a story to it. If it's narrative, then it requires understanding social constructs that are implicit within the relationships between the characters, and that's more than his mind absorbs. He would rather read like a research article. And as I'm talking to you and watching my face contort trying to hear you, I'm thinking, if someone didn't know that I have a hearing issue, they might wonder what's up with me. And there are so many ways in which, even if it's not any kind of a limitation or difficulty in your life, that just who you are is different. And we all have to learn to just say, that's who that person is. Let's learn about what that means for them. In the GA session, they keep talking about making sure the word you're saying lands with the same meaning with the other person. And it's the same kind of thing. Okay, well, thank you very much. What I have introduced the last time and today is something called a name communion, where like we share flowers and waters from our lives, from our world outside, so we also can bring the names of those people that are sacred to us into our space with a name communion. So I mentioned that my papa was a big inspiration for me, so I would like to begin by saying Tom, and if you would like to go around with the mic and let everyone have a chance to say the name of someone.
Barbara.
What?
Somebody, did you think what influenced you like Cole was talking about? Who's your superhero? Just think, we'll come back. I've already thought about it, because I cheated. I thought about it.
Margie.
Okay.
Norma.
Norma?
My father.
You're not allowed to say Cole.
I'm not going to. I was thinking about Jerry.
Jerry, there you go.
Charles.
Bruce Bennett.
Harry Tallier.
I would say I get to pick three since I'm working. The women in my life, my grandmother, Vesta Viva Goff, my mother, Rosemary Goff Sale, and my wife, Suzanne Williamson Sale.
For all these people who inspired us, may we know that they see us becoming the things they inspired us to be. Anyone on Zoom want to add? Thank you for pointing that out, General.
Diane, my sister Diane.
Michael,
Cheryl Edward.
Thank you. So now we're going to relax a little and have some fun.
Sorry, Kelly, I forgot.
So this song, I invite you to stand, dance, move, sing along with me. The first line that we're going to say is like the chorus beat for beat, it's pretty easy. It's the part you can definitely pick up on. If you want to try to keep up with me on Jason Mraz's verse lyrics, you can. But we're going to have some fun. Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone. Mm-hmm. Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone. People done gone crazy. People done gone mad. People done forgot the superpowers we all have. We were born to love, not hate. We can decide our fate. And look for the good in everyone and celebrate our mistakes. If there's a silver lining, everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone. Everyone needs sunshine. Everyone needs rain. Everyone is carrying around some kind of pain. I see who you are. You're just like me. I see you're searching for a purpose, guided by a dream. I see who you are. I'm just like you. I get lost sometimes and I forget what I came here to do, but I keep on trying. When it gets frightening, for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good. Look for the good. Look for the good in everyone. Take it, Michael. Everyone is nature, everyone is God, everyone is love and light and vibration. Look for the good, look for the good. Everyone gets mad sometimes, and maybe they should. Look for the good, look for the good. Yeah, look out for all the heroes in your neighborhood. Look for the good. Look for the good. Life sure would be sweeter if everybody would. Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. Always seemed impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone. One more time. For the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good. Look for the good. Look for the good in everyone. I got to tell you guys, every time I sing that song, walking around in my head, and I get to the line that says, "Look for the people who will set your soul free," I think of this church.
We are so fortunate here. We have an entire room full of superheroes. And today's superhero is Koa. I thank him for what he has brought us, not only in words, but in mood. So thank you, my friends. And now is our opportunity to give back to this congregation in a material way. If you are a guest or a visitor, do not feel obligated to give. Your presence is gift enough for us. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your contributions to our physical comfort. And we appreciate your contributions to our community by being who you are. Thank you. We come to a time where we can share our joys and sorrows. As we say, joys are heightened and burdens are lightened when shared with friends. Raise your hand to share a brief joy or sorrow. Our mic master will be around.
I've been promoted.
I'll share first because I never got a chance to share my inspirations because the mic master never came over to me. But I want to share just a joy that came to mind when Koa was talking about saying our inspirations. And I have two inspirations, and the moment that I realized they were my inspirations happened in this church. And the first one I'll say is obviously my dad, Les Tacey, and he was singing the song, he was singing I Hope You Dance. He was singing I Hope You Dance with the acoustic guitar, and he was standing right there, and I just said, I want to do that. I want to be able to do that. And so I learned how to do it. And then the other one was my Aunt Charlotte Holliday, his sister, and she was playing, funnily enough, another dance song. It was that him? Why can't I think of what it's called? Let it be a dance we do. Yes, she was playing that hymn here at Les and Steph's wedding. And what I loved about what she was doing is every single time she played through it, she changed it every time. And I remember thinking, wow, that's so cool. I want to learn how to do that. So my two inspirations, Charlotte Holliday and Les Tacey, happened right here in this church.
You think we should apply for sainthood or something?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't ask you either.
Oh, I don't know. I was kind of happy you did.
My wife, Ginny.
Very good choice.
I was going to say Pete, and it sounds so.
This is getting a little bit too much, you know.
My mother.
My daughter, Sarah.
Did you come up with somebody else? You can say yourself if you want.
That would be so self-centered. Just my parents.
Joys and sorrows?
I have a sorrow. I asked Alan to put up a picture here. You've heard me talk in the past, many of you, about my son and his relationship. Once partners, lately good friends, but Fabian, it's a complex and convoluted thing that was brought into our family, but you can see it in his face. He was a good person. He was immensely overweight, and we knew he was going to come to a sad end, and he died a week ago at age 33, and it's just so sad that somehow he couldn't have had a better life. That's just very sad, and I wanted to share that.
Thank you, Jack. We support you in that loss.
We just have Suzanne on Zoom.
Hi. I think this is a joy. I just want to say thanks to the congregation for the privilege that I have had this past few days to be your, I guess the best term is delegate at large, your second delegate to the General Assembly. And as Sue mentioned at the beginning, it's very busy, a lot going on. It's not the first time I've been to GA. It's probably the best time I've been to GA. Every time I go, I realize what a very diverse, really different, really widespread community of people do make up our religious denomination. But I always come out of it feeling that we have really caring people. And I'm feeling that way now. We'll be learning the results of some of the major vote that people have been concerned about mostly this year, the Article 2 revision. We'll be learning that in a few hours. There's been a great deal of respect in these discussions, and I just wanted you to know that. And I hope that I'll be able to share with you some of the things that have gone on in the next few weeks. And, you know, speaking of COA, I don't see how he could possibly have done GA and prepared this wonderful message and service today. He obviously has reached his superpower at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Betsy?
Some of you have asked about Ruth, and I mentioned something a little earlier. She was supposed to come home from the hospital. Her sister was supposed to bring her on Friday, and I haven't been able to reach her either today or yesterday. So I do have a concern, and I have emailed her sister to see if she can update me. But that's my concern. So let's all keep her in our thoughts and prayers.
What? Oh, okay. COA will drop a stone in our water bowl to represent the thoughts of anything that we are still holding in our hearts and have chosen not to share. But we do thank everyone who contributes to this portion of the service. And now we have a closing hymn, 1019, Everything Possible.
Stand and sing with me, guys. We haven't done this one, at least in a long time, so melody might be a little bit unfamiliar. Just follow along as best you can. We've cleared off the table, leftovers saved, washed the dishes and put them away. I've told you a story, tucked you in tight at the end of your knockabout day. As the moon sets its sails, we carry you to sleep over the midnight sea. I will sing you a song no one sang to me. May it keep you good company. Oh, you can be anybody you want to be. You can love whomever you will. You can travel any country
travel any country where your heart leads. Know that I will love you still. You can live by yourself, you can gather friends around, you can choose one special one. And the only measure of your words and your deeds will be the love you leave behind when you're done.
Thank you. Wonderful song, wonderful service. We have just some closing words, and then I invite everyone to come to the Quimby Room for a snack. We go into the world empowered by the knowledge that we each have unique gifts which matter, that can change our world and liberate us to be our very best selves. This is good. Go look for the good. Amen.
One more round of applause for Koa.